Welcome to On the Chain. This is Jeff here with co-host Chip. What is going on, Chip?
Hey,
Man,
Jeff.
another great day in the crypto space.
As always, Jeff.
That's what, as always,
Even on the weekends, always a good day.
even on the weekends, even on a Sunday, because you know what, Ripple XRP, that's what. And XRP is extremely resilient. ETH might be a security. We know that hyperinflation is inbound. And guess what? Australia leading regulatory certainty in the crypto space. What? Say it ain't so. You ready to kick this thing off, Chip?
Go.
Welcome to On the Chain.
There you go, Jeff. Yeah. Hey, before we go any further, I just want to do one shout out. None other than Connie Stewart. See Stuart in the chat. Was her birthday on Friday, and unfortunately, we weren't streaming on Friday, so I couldn't wish her happy birthday. So, wish her happy birthday. One of the earliest subs on the channel, and Connie, always thank you for your support. And Jeff, there are so many stories to unpack, but I'm always impressed. You know, we had John Deaton and Jeremy Hogan on, and they were talking about the internet sleuths and how the things they uncover. And it just seems like there's an endless barrage of things that we're finding out. And when it comes to, like you said, when it comes to XRP in the digital space, as John Deaton has said many times and recently in tweets, this is not an attack. If you see this as the SEC going after Ripple, you're missing the big picture. This is an assault. This is an AR-15, open it up, assault on all of crypto. And the funny thing is, if you're a Bitcoin fan or you're an Ethereum fan or just a crypto fan in general, you're like, well, Bitcoin's safe. Well, what gives you that impression? They've just been unseating all of the Hinman speech, basically saying none of it's there, Jeff. I mean, like, and if you think Ethereum's safe, they're like, that was a personal opinion. It had nothing to do with the SEC. So basically, zero clarity for the space and any asset.
It's all fair game, Chip. All of it. And this, so there's a lot to really cover, and we go through this, it's almost like we're this broken record, but there's always these new ways of looking at what's going on here. We love the growth and development in this space. XRP is still growing and building, across the world. There's a lot to be seen there. Ripple expanding, growing, and building their RippleNet solution. XRP Ledger, still one of the best platforms out there, but overall, what's amazing, you look and you start seeing there's all these new projects that are popping up. There's all this new concept of decentralized finance, right? And one thing, Chip, that we talk a lot about is decentralization equals freedom. And with that, you can get political freedom, you can get economic freedom, and it makes a huge impact on the bottom line. And these are people all over the world. So some of the things that you just brought up, really key. Right before we got started, you said you wanted to jump right into what's going on over in Australia because, that could be, really important to really identify. We have a lot of followers from Australia, Chip.
Yeah, we do. And there's a lot to unpack there. And I think it's kind of a weird thing too, right? It's like, yay, let's cheer them on, Parliament there, for doing some really great things when it comes to cryptocurrency. But when it comes to crushing the nation with tyranny, well, that's fine. The pitchforks are out. That one's already done. But Jeff, this is where a lot of people around the world really don't understand when it comes to, and I remind people of what our Second Amendment in our Constitution protects. It's the right to bear arms. It says arms, doesn't say a revolver or whatever, but it gives the citizens, and it's not to protect against each other. It's to protect against tyranny. It's to protect us from the government. If you remember, not so many years ago, the Aussies sort of gave up their weapons. They're like, yeah, we'll give them up. Here you go. Here, not a bad thing. And then not a few years later, here we are at this juncture where we have this mass, bizarre tyranny going on. Now, I'll just say that in Florida, we're lucky because we've got a governor who believes in no mandates for wearing this on your face and no mandates for doing one of these. Okay. And because they do not believe in that, we're the second per capita in the nation of states that have the lowest of the C19 and the expirations from that. Just being very careful with my words here, but that tells me, Jeff, that something's going right. And of course, I've had it. Of course, I went through it, and a lot of my friends have gone through it. A lot of people have 99.9x. But here you have a country that's doing very good things. I look at the legislation. We looked at it the other day, and we'll get into it. I just wanted to get my little tirade out of here. But on one hand, they're like, "Yay, everything's great over here." On the other hand, in the name of apparently health, they're dragging people out of houses and said, "Did you post this on social media?" And they're beating them senseless. And I'm like, well, I'm not so convinced there. So I think it is a great thing that they're moving forward, that it does set a good precedent, especially what the U.S. could hope to do, because the parliament's getting together and actually making something happen, which is not happening here. But we're not too far away from that, are we, Jeff? Jeff, how close are we to the precipice on our side over here?
Over here, I
Yeah.
don't know, but what's going on over in Australia? Because I look at that, if they're getting close to uh some sort of certainty, regulatory certainty, regulatory clarity, if they're understanding that financial dynamic, maybe there's a few things that we can learn from what they're doing over there. But you're right, there is it's kind of like a conflict, of tension going on over there, very similar to what you see in some other countries like China, where there's always this conflict between the political system and the economic system. We're seeing that little tendency, creeping up in Australia. However, we've also seen in Australia a lot more direct acceptance of cryptocurrency. And we've seen that kind of develop over, the past couple years, Chip. And there's been multiple projects that have been tied right in that are big projects over in Australia. And there are a lot of similarities between the economies of the U.S. and the economy of Australia. And so you have, a lot of the same passions and, what you have the similar, like the, what's that show where Mark Cuban is on? And so you have those ideas of entrepreneurship, trying to grow and build. But for them to adopt and adapt towards the crypto space, I think is something that we really have to unpack a little bit more, considering some of the things that you just mentioned politically.
Yeah, exactly. And we probably should maybe go in a little bit to legislation, because I think it is good. It's well thought out, and it's good to see that. And it must have been in play for some time, Jeff. I'm not thinking this is something that was just like dreamt up in the last, uh, you know, 15 or 20 days, because it's well thought out. And I do think it does approach it in a logical sense, and much the same way. When Coinbase came out and said, "Well, here's how we're thinking about legislation." I love it, because anytime you take something and you put it in the public forum, it's like people can say what they want to say about it. But again, it's really meant for the legislators to kind of pick it up and run with it, and not just sort of shun it to the side, or what people don't realize, the SEC doesn't make legislation. However, they could have put something in place where they adopted Hester Pierce's her safe harbor. And again, this would have been a nice thing, but it's really not their sort of jurisdiction to be doing stuff. But to regulate something that's not clear, this is where I think where we're getting in trouble. And this is where I think where Australia is headed in the right direction as far as this is coming down. Now there is another entity in the US that polices stuff, that is going to come out and has drafted some crypto regulation. It's not the CFTC, it's FAFF or FAF, whatever it is. It's one of these other bodies. There's too many of them. That's the other problem we have. But again, at least they're thinking about it, and they're going to unleash that crypto legislation this week. So we'll see
I
how
see that link to that nice article, what was going on over in Australia, is gone. There's now an error 404 code. They knew we were going to talk about it, and they said, quick, we got to take it down.
It could be. No,
So many good things going on over there.
My dog woke up from his slumber, and he's like jumping all over me. Maxie, get out. Anyway, that's what happens.
That is what happens.
Come on, Max.
So Chip, there's some other things going on here, and actually, it's interesting. So on this topic, let's see, Tony from Thinking Crypto had actually posted a nice tweet, and then you responded with a clip from the conversation that we had with DM Logic from the other night. Let me pull up this tweet
Hang on a second, let me just-
from, yeah, go ahead. Let me pull up this tweet from Tony, and I want to go through this. I think there's some really, key points that he made here, and this kind of goes back to exactly how Chip started out, this evening. Talking about uh, the suit of the SEC v. Ripple. That it's not just Ripple, it's not just the XRP digital asset in the crosshairs. It's really the entire industry at large, and one of the things that Tony then brought up here, and I spot on, and that's what I said. I responded back and I said spot on. But here, all crypto projects companies should come together and form a massive legal team and file a lawsuit against the SEC. So right now we see limited action against the SEC. I think it's interesting too when Chip comes back in, but we saw what happened with Kick and their kin token. Never got true clarity there, but they did pay a $5 million fine. But the CEO of Kick said, well, we're going to start raising money for all those who want to fight the SEC. I believe it might have been a little bit early when they came out and said that, and they were, relatively small entity, small organization, in the grander scheme of things. Now with Ripple, Coinbase, and some of the others, and we talked about Terraforma. These are bigger projects, a lot more money, a lot more exposure to the crypto space, and it has a lot of meaning, and it can also get a lot of legs to have this pursuit. Then we see, obviously, what John Deaton is doing on behalf of the XRP community. So here with Tony, so it's so critical, that to see really a massive legal team with all of the crypto, it doesn't have to be all, but a large number, of projects and companies coming together and filing a joint lawsuit against the SEC, or at the very minimum, if they don't have standing to file a lawsuit, then at the very minimum to put together a barrier and just stand up to the SEC and say, once, enough is enough. Right, Chip? I mean, if you look at this statement, again, I don't think it has to be necessarily a massive lawsuit, but it does have to be, hey, we've had enough.
Yeah, but we saw the other day where that one guy was hey, come show up and speak at a conference, and then all of a sudden they served him with a subpoena. They didn't even have the decency to even pay, even though they were granted tickets. They just, hey, show up and give him a subpoena, and he's countersuing. He's suing. He's got the wherewithal to kind of put some energy behind that. By the way, I've got the little clip if you want to play it. Do you want to play the clip from the other night when DM was on there?
Yeah, let me just go through the rest of the tweet, and then we'll put that up.
Yeah.
But here, it's the only way the crypto industry would stand a chance. Gensler is going after everything. Even if the lawsuit doesn't work, it could get the attention of Congress. So I think we don't need the lawsuit. What we need is all of the companies getting together and knocking at the doorstep of Congress to say, hey, you know what? Enough. You've got to stand up to this overreaching zealot that is in the SEC. And Chip, yeah, go ahead and bring that up, unless you have some commentary on it first.
No, I'll bring it up. I'll bring the little play, but this is a little bit different because we're talking about what's called a PAC, which is a political action committee, which has which really is meant to kind of talk to the legislatures, and I thought you brought up a really solid idea in here. So let's listen.
So I'm wondering, I mean, one of the ideas I had back in August, I closed my business mostly because of crypto. And since then, I've been sort of drifting aimlessly and trying to figure out what I'm going to do with all my time. But one of the things I thought about was starting a political action committee that was crypto based, because I don't see those kind of groups springing up anywhere.
And he's kind of right, because they don't really have like lobbying groups, whatever, but the PAC has a certain protocol and rules that they can follow. And this is where I think it would be really great too. It's so weird seeing us on the screen like 4 times or twice here. Paused and then talking on the side, but I'll play the rest of it. Let's just get his idea out. This is what we talked about.
Am I unaware of the fact that they are springing up, or aren't they?
Or not?
There's a couple that are out there, like what is it, Blockchain Association? But have you heard of them?
No.
I mean, are they outspoken? And really, a lot of this, if you think about having a lobbyist group, and we've talked about this before, so I'm glad you're bringing it up. but think about it from a regional perspective, right? So if you want to lobby, go to Washington to lobby, or do you want to lobby your state rep, state house, state senate, and then your congressional representative. And those are that's your direct circle of influence. If you can get enough people to come in as a starting point, to me, that's a great,
Yeah, it is a great, and I think that's kind of really where we sort of start, because you try to do it at the national level. And if you see what's happened in Wyoming, Jeff, I mean, your point's well taken, because Wyoming, they started locally, they started talking, and then as you see more states bubbling up, look what's happening in Texas. Now, the point you made in the video was, you talked about, well, you have a lot of stuff going on in Tampa. You got a mayor of Tampa who's really pro crypto. Then you've got a mayor of Miami who's incredibly pro crypto, so much so that they started Miami Coin, and it's making the city a lot of money, and it's basically offsetting taxes. Like, that's a revolutionary way to look at solving a potential problem. So Tony's idea of his is more focused around like a lawsuit. How do we get a lawsuit going against them, countersue them? But in a way, Deaton's motion to intervene and then grant us the amici status kind of does tick that box. Now, you're not going after them for potentially damages, but the motion to intervene did cover that. So I feel like, but I think his thought is in the right place.
Yeah, no, I think so too. He followed up. He said, essentially pool money and legal resources together and tie the SEC in a battle that they won't have the funds or manpower to handle. Now,
that's never going to happen.
That's never going to happen. The federal government has an unlimited supply of funds. So the fact that we're going to get to that point, well, there's not going to be enough money, to, if the federal government wanted to tie it up forever, then they could afford to do that. You're dropping, they just left $85 billion worth of armaments, overseas. I think they can spend $1 billion on a lawsuit. But anyhow, to that point though, here was trying to find his other tweet. Oh, here it is. So I kind of like, he followed up with another tweet, and this was kind of like, what it would be like to what it's like working or reaching out to Gary Gensler, and this is the response when they say, hey, why don't you come in and talk to us? So the groups do come in, and one of them actually filmed it, and this is what Tony was showing us, and this is what they get. This was this is the response.
Yeah, it's like, I'm going to sue you. Here's a Wells notice, which is a notice of future enforcement for something you didn't know needed enforcement. And right in line with that, Jeff, there was this tweet put out by Susan Friedman. She is the director of policy, or the head of policy, I should say, over at Ripple. And there's kind of she had put this up here talking about, great to see Australia's policymakers recognize the potential not only of crypto, but the necessity for regulatory clarity for the new emerging tech sector. Ripple's recommendations that any future regulatory framework should be technology agnostic were included in their final report. And again, this kind of came up in some hearings. That's the whole thing, technology agnostic. Remember, it's like, it doesn't, and quite honestly, it's almost everything agnostic. We're not picking winners and losers. We're just defining what a framework is. And I love the fact that it's technology, because we're not going to say, well, this part over here is okay, but this part over here is maybe not so good. And what she was referring to is this article in Decrypt we can look at, which talks about Australia moving closer to adopting a more comprehensive regulatory framework for digital assets. And then on this one, Stu Alderoty, who is general counsel for Ripple, said, add Australia to the list of countries that have woken up to the fact that regulatory uncertainty must be tackled with a sense of urgency to retain and develop jobs, growth in the crypto asset economy. Now its senators are working with industry participants. And one of the things we learned about the other day is one of the industry participants is Ripple, R3, and there's a bunch of other ones in there. But again, this is forward thinking, Jeff. And this is where I think we really have to say and commend, the Australian Senate for going in there and saying, hey, we're not the experts. Let's bring some players in here and let's learn from people that have been there and are doing it and are making it happen. I mean, don't you think that's a great way to approach a
Spot
problem?
on. Man, it's so great. You know, I mean, over here you have people, you know, they're trying to understand the dynamics of the digital asset space by applying antiquated legislation with antiquated ideas from 80, 90 years ago. You know, and so they're trying to continuously fit the digital asset space under the Securities Act of 1934 and the Securities Exchange Act of 1933 or vice versa. But 1933, you know, the Howey test. 1946, I get it. The Howey test was great. It really solved the equation of how do you identify whether or not someone's selling an unregistered security. I get it. You know, but now we're in a completely different world, and they continuously want to apply outdated ideas. But the problem and what you're highlighting here and what Stuart Alderoty is highlighting is that in Australia, they reached out to the best and the brightest within the fintech and the crypto space. And they said, hey, by the way, you know, here's what we're trying to do. What do you guys think? But on our side, you get Gary Gensler, who taught at MIT. So since he taught at MIT for a year or two and he taught blockchain, he's the foremost expert. You know where he's the foremost expert? In government. That's where he's the foremost expert. That's it. That's not saying a lot, because if you wanted to get the foremost experts, there's a lot of people to choose from. And guess what? Gary Gensler is probably at the bottom of the list. You know, he's not the foremost expert that you should be bringing in. So if Congress really wanted to do their due diligence, do it the right way, the infrastructure bill, if they wanted to discuss and bring in crypto and do it the right way, they would have brought in the best and the brightest to consult with them ahead of time. But you got a bunch of knuckleheads that are over there that don't understand anything. And so we can take a chapter out of the book of Australia and see what they're doing. And I think it's spot on, 100%.
Yeah, without a doubt. I want to put this up here. This is XRP Speedboat. He says, granted, Ripple has problems with the SEC, but it pales in comparison to us Canadians that have to deal with bagged milk. Jeez. You know what, man? I've always wondered how that bagged milk thing works. It doesn't sound like a great, like,
I grew up with bagged milk. It's the greatest thing ever.
It's the dumbest thing ever, Jeff. It makes no sense in history. I mean, you know what it is? It's like when you come from different cultures, like my wife is from, you know, grew up in South America. And so things that were like normal to her growing up seem like weird to me, and like vice versa. Things they used to eat, I'm like, what? And then when you're like, you try to give it the whole idea of, yeah, we eat peanut butter and jelly. She's like, what? Peanuts with jelly on bread? That's not food. That's just like, what is that?
Yeah,
so it's like, you're like, it just sounded normal to me growing up. I don't know. I ate it for lunch when, you know, mom was making a packed lunch. It was the easiest thing to do.
Cut your sandwich in a triangle, right? Would you cut them in a triangle so it's easier to dip in the glass of milk? So you
that too, yeah. And also cut the crust off, because that was like evil for kids to have. And you cut, if you're a kid, you got the, you know, you were real pampered as a kid if you got the crust cut off your sandwich, Jeff. But yeah. And then, so this has nothing to do with anything. But it kind of plays to, we're talking about politicians, and I saw this tweet earlier. I had to just go find it. But here we are right here, and I love this. It says, never trust anyone who's never been poor, and never trust any politician who's never been slapped around by the establishment. And that right there is like so well said, right? I mean, it really is spot on.
It is spot on.
And I wanted to go ahead and kind of unpack this a little bit. This article that kind of jumps into a little bit. And again, let's think about this in the back of our minds as you have a country that's looking forward about crypto clarity and moving forward. So this was in Decrypt. Australian lawmakers want crypto framework that recognizes DAOs, which are decentralized autonomous organization. Now, this is kind of featuring that bit of it, but I want to move down to the part where it gets into, yeah, let me get that. So here it is right here. So based on advice from crypto firms and organizations, including SwiftX, Ripple, R3, Blockchain Australia, this is how they kind of came up with it. And they propose that the Australian government aligns with digital asset regulations with requirements imposed at the same asset and its traditional form, with the principle of the same risk, same activity, same treatment. And that was what the R3 proposal read. And
Dude,
I'm going to
how
go past.
how great is that though? It's just
Oh,
look
it's
at that
phenomenal.
statement, that paragraph where they said, "We propose that the Australian government." Is there any paragraph like that anywhere in the US that says, from R3 or from Ripple that says, then this is to the government that we
Yeah.
propose that the US government does X. And there's someone on the other side that's listening. That's the key. That's what we were just talking about. And this is so spot on, that sentence there.
And the
So
fact that
amazing.
they have an audience, Jeff, that's the other big thing too. So we look at creating DAOs. One notable recommendation calls for the Australian government to establish a new structure for decentralized autonomous organizations that would be recognized by the Corporations Act. I don't want to get into this because I really want to focus our energy here on other proposals which came from, as far as licensing is concerned.
Did you see FTX today? I think it was on Hamilton steering wheel and crypto.com all over the place in the F1
Oh, that's
race
awesome.
right here at home in Austin, Texas.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's just like, that's adoption, man. That's like mainstream. If it's like you're watching, Formula One and you see, boom, it's sitting right there. That you can't get any more in your face. Then they talked about the need to ensure anti-money laundering, AML, the counterterrorism financing, CTF regulations that do not undermine innovation. And then I want to get into here. So this is Senator Andrew Bragg. He says an agenda for Australian leadership on cryptocurrency. The final Senate committee report has been tabled. And so look at how excited he is right there, which is great because we don't have any government officials outside of Tom Emmer and, Warren Davidson and, some other folks out there that are really pumped about it. But I wanted to, here's his final report on his website here. He talks
Where's
about
Max
digital.
Water?
What's that?
We need to ship Maxine Waters over there. Sorry.
We do. Yeah. So it says on digital assets, Australia can be a leader in digital assets. Yeah.
Right.
Australians can access new choices and lower prices. Right on. It means Australians can have more control of their financial destiny. Oh, yeah. Rather than being dependent on endless intermediation. This is what I like when a politician, Jeff, can so succinctly say something in one sentence that covers a wide range of bases. Like, I don't know, Senator Bragg, but I think that whoever wrote this, it doesn't sound like gumbly, over-lawyered, goopy stuff. It sounds like anybody can read this and get it. Like, oh yeah, I'd like to have more control over my financial destiny. Versus, Jeff, what do we get here? What are our politicians telling us about, crypto and what are their thoughts here?
Their thoughts are empty thoughts from empty vessels, from empty brains. I mean, if you really think about, the way they've not thought through this very well, it's all about control and power. It's all about, making sure they grease the hands of the lobbyists that support them and that support mechanism that's in place. I mean, you can't think about it any other way because it makes no sense otherwise, because here we have proven use cases all over the world. You have the government of Australia, you've got Japan, you have UK, you have got Singapore, you've got governments all over the world that have established some sort of clarity over how to handle crypto assets. Then it comes here and you get people like Janet Yellen that comes out and say, oh, it's all for nefarious purposes. There's no other way. It's only nefarious purposes. Then you get, an S show like Elizabeth Warren, and she comes out and she talks about her last $100 that got tied up because she couldn't access the exchange and she's day trading cryptocurrency. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. And then you got Daddy G. There you go, Michael. You get Daddy G, our buddy over there at the SEC. And, he's so highly educated because, of course, Chip, you realize he taught at MIT because, he had to be highly educated to teach at MIT. But what are they giving us? They're giving us nothing. Not that crowd. Now, on the other hand, of all of this equation, those that are smart and that resonate, and this is bipartisan in nature because you've got some interesting people like Darren Soto, you've got Warren Davidson, you've got Ted Budd, you've got Tom Emmer, you've got, and there's a whole host of others. Not enough of them though, Chip. Not enough in Congress that are being outspoken. If there's only 10, that's not enough. What is 430 whatever congressional representatives? That number is going to fluctuate a little bit with redistricting and lack of population in California. But hopefully some will gain some. I forget what the exact number is, Chip, but is that 437,
Yeah, I
427?
don't know. It's for something. Yeah, I don't know. It's
Or something. But anyhow, the point being is that you
starts at
have
five,
maybe
so
10. Maybe you have 10. That's it. 10 that get it. So that means we have a long road. We have some top-notch senators that also get it. So it's not that we don't have outspoken individuals. It's just that the ones right now that are in power and those that run the significant committees like the Financial Services Committee, it's like, you might as well just be, tossing all this legislation into the fire because it's pointless bringing it to a committee when they won't even read the legislation. Chip, Gary Gensler wouldn't even read the safe harbor.
well, he may have read it, but he wouldn't admit to reading it. He wouldn't cop to it. And yeah, he's a little bit on the I don't know why he was being so cynical about it. I mean, why was he being so weird about it? It's like, just say, hey, like, I did it. The other big name is, we mentioned a lot of people in the House of Representatives, but I wanted to mention and highlight Cynthia Lummis, who is a senator, and she's the one really kind of banging the bell. As far as in the Senate, there's a lot of people in the House of Representatives that are doing it. And then here we've got, I want to jump back to this sentence right here, because he talks about it here. He says, Australians can have more control over their financial destiny rather than being dependent on endless intermediation.
That's
now,
great.
here, what do we hear a lot of? Well, you're not smart enough to figure it out, and it's too risky for you. And it's like they position an argument hoping that it's going to be in our best interest, but it's just a senseless argument. It has nothing to do with that. He goes on, Senator Bragg goes on to say that the committees recommended a comprehensive crypto framework to deliver Australian leadership will be competitive with Singapore, the UK, and the US. Well, yes, with the competitive, yes, but not owning us when it comes to regulation. This will drive investment and jobs in Australia. And again,
into Australia,
into
not
Australia,
just in, but
right, into Australia, right?
That's a statement that you can underscore,
Maybe.
multiple times over, right?
I don't know if
Maybe,
a lot
right?
of people are like, I cannot wait to get there to be,
not many yet,
some things have to change a little bit first there, but
yeah. So that's what's interesting about this is that you have, two issues at play in Australia. You have the economic freedom issue, but then we have this recent lack of political freedom issue that we're starting to witness. The two don't normally coexist with one another. So they're kind of at a crossroads right now. So they have all these great things going on right now with what we're reading. But the other side of the coin, Chip, and if you scroll up, they want people to be self-sufficient. If you don't give them freedom, how are you going to be self-sufficient how are you going to have more control over your financial destiny if you don't have control over your destiny?
yeah, I mean, everything. It's like everything kind of tells in the census, new access, new choices, lower prices. Now, there is something interesting, Jeff, and I don't know how to read into this because, again, I don't think we're as familiar with Australian sort of politics. But right here, when it talks about debanking, he nails it right here. Now, I don't know the context of this, but he says debanking is debilitating. It destroys the ability of Australia's small business to disrupt and deliver new ideas. So when we talk about being debanked, is that like a censorship thing where they're like, okay, you don't have the ability to bank, and therefore, as a business, how do you get things done? So again, this legislation could potentially bypass all that and prove. So this is an interesting idea right here. And again, not being as familiar with the politics, Jeff, I don't know what your thought is. I mean, that's the way I'm reading it here.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand what they're saying because, debanking means you're being removed from banking.
Right.
Right. But unbanked means that the people haven't even been banked. And that's a major issue. And people try to underscore the unbanked issue, but it is an issue. Because if you go to certain countries, it's extremely difficult to bank and it's costly. Sometimes they don't have bank branches nearby. And so they end up in fiat. We were playing that video the other day with the agriculturalist, whatever, you get it.
Yeah.
He is growing something. He's growing produce over in Africa, and it was interesting because he was able to take his orders online, and his customers were buying in crypto, and he was paying vendors for supplies that he needed in crypto, meaning that prior to that, he wasn't banked, or it was too costly for him to be banked. It was too costly for him to use credit cards. Here in this scenario, debanked, I'm trying, we might need to look it up, because the way I look at it, debanks means they remove somebody from banking, and I'm not sure what that is. I don't know.
This
What
kind
do
of,
you think?
well, I don't know, because I'm looking at the second paragraph where he says the committee's delivered a market solution to debanking through consumer protection laws and the insertion of the Australian Financial Complaints Authority. So he kind of like is alluding to the fact that there already are some protection laws on the books, although they may not have potentially. That doesn't really help when it comes to if you are debanked, or let's say you are removed, the cryptocurrency will sort of like really will help that. And that's really all it is. It's just an overview that he put up here. I liked it because it's right out of his office, and I thought it was very
so
sensible.
here it is. Yeah, here it is. And this is kind of what, oh no, that's de-risking. Hang on. What happened to the debanking? It was right under there, and then debanking. So debanking, nope, it's not here either. Huh. It also has to do with Australia. So it's definitely a major issue that's been circulating over there with this whole debanking thing. There is no opportunity to remedy practices if an entity is deemed non-compliant prior to debanking. So where's the debanking? There's definitely something going on in Australia where they're debanking people.
Yeah, I don't know. There might be something going on. Maybe they're not, for whatever reason, they're if you don't have a bank, how are you as a business going to function? I mean, you need to be able to, you cannot function without it. And so I think that's one of the things he's sort of potentially alluding to. I don't know. It's hard to really.
Go. Bragg committee to probe major bank debanking of fintech startups. So the debanking is very focused on fintechs and startups. So that's where this is all the center of this. And this is going back. There was an article here in the Financial Review from May. And there was some stuff that I saw from 2015. So maybe as the fintechs have been developing, we know that, a lot of banks have been very antagonistic to the fintech space. So that becomes a major issue, which is why it's being brought into this crypto legislation, which now makes sense.
Yeah. And then so another thing that broke on Friday, of course, we don't stream on Friday. Sometimes there's really good news events that happen on the weekend. But I wanted to cover this one here because the G7 have essentially sort of agreed. They reached their agreement on digital trade and data. The G7 is the U.S., Japan, Germany, Great Britain, France, Italy, and Canada. And so I want to throw this up here. This is so they're apparently there they all are. Yay! Look at us. We're sitting next to each other and having fun.
So exciting.
Super exciting, right? So this happened. This signed in London. The group of 7 wealthy nations agreed on the principles how to govern cross-border data use and digital trade. Britain said what was described as a breakthrough that could liberalize hundreds of billions of dollars in international commerce. They reached an agreement in London. The deal sets out middle ground between highly regulated data protection regimes used in European countries and the more open approach of the US. We oppose digital protectionism and authoritarianism, and today we've adopted the G7 digital trade principles. This is kind of weird to see by the G7. They oppose them, but yet they're glad to implement them.
But yeah, I was going to say,
what the hell, Jeff?
We're against it. We're going to tell you
is this, Jeff?
But yeah, sleight of hand. It's sleight of hand. Look at what we're doing over here.
Don't look over here. Watch
Don't look at my right hand. Watch the little bunny rabbit.
Right. It says digital trade, broadly defined as trading goods, services, either enabled or delivered digitally, encompassing activities from the distribution of films, TV. For example, Britain alone, remotely delivered trade was worth about 326 billion pounds. That's about almost 450 billion in USD. It says in 2019, and then a quarter of all of its trade, according to government study. So differing rules governing the use of customer data can create significant barriers. But I think they're on the right track, because when they start talking about let's have a common tax and let's have that be 15%, that's the wrong road to go down. Now, when you say like let's have some commonality and agreement when it comes to how we're going to look at this, I think it's a better way to look at it. We may not always agree with what they're doing, but again, every country has the right to do what they want because they're sovereign nations and they have the right to say, hey, this is how we're going to look at it. But if they reach a deal and they're talking to each other and they say, well, it's a first step in reducing the barriers, principles covered, open digital markets, cross-border data flows. Interesting how they call that. Safeguards for workers, consumers, businesses, and then it says we should address unjustified obstacles to cross-border data flows. I don't really know what that is. That cross-border payments, Jeff. I don't know. What would you think that is? What is a cross-border data flow? Digital information, digital assets.
Yeah, I would assume it'd be just digital info and maybe financial transaction.
Yeah, because it talks about addressing privacy, data protection, the protection of intellectual property rights, which is big, and security.
That's major. You think about intellectual property, and there's a couple countries that don't abide by it.
No.
And so if they don't abide by it, then what does that say for us? It's not.
Yeah, one begins with this letter right there.
That's it. That's the letter.
So it is the letter, but I thought that was interesting too. It's like, seems like we're trying to move in the right direction, although what we see happening with Australia, it's just adding another, it's just adding one more country to the list that is upended and defeated and blown by the US. And meanwhile, we've just turned it. It's sad what we become as a nation. It's disturbing on many levels because, and Vladimir Putin came out the other day and he addressed it, the whole idea of the wokeness, that it destroys values, it destroys countries, destroys people from the inside. What it really does, it gets people fighting about nonsense, right? It gets people fighting about things that don't really matter in the grand scheme of things. And only if you are a free nation or a semi-free nation, you've got time to think about these things like, geez, I wonder what I'm going to do today. Well, I think I'm going to have an argument with somebody about whatever. And it's a way just to divide people when you can get back to, what really does matter. And when I'm talking about everything, what matters to people? Hyperinflation. When you go, I just noticed today going in the store, buying a drink that I normally buy, it is now 200% of what it used to be. It is now double the price of what it used to be. And it was just not too long ago. The funny thing was 2 weeks ago, they had it used to be buy 10 for $1, and then it became 7 for $1, and now it's become $2 each. No deals, right? There are no deals. So this is where we're headed in this hyperinflation. And normally I wouldn't think about that, but something 10, when XRP was 5 for $1, that stuck in my brain. When something was 10 for $1, that's $1 each. Then I go, wait a minute, 7, and that was 2 weeks ago, and now it's 2. So now it's doubling. And it's going up, and that's where we're at, and that's what really matters, right? People aren't generally making more money, but now their money buys less. And this is the whole idea of cryptocurrency: is that if you want to hedge against inflation, you want to protect wealth. Something like gold is a great instrument, or silver, right? It's a protection against or with your wealth, right? But if you want to invest in cryptocurrencies, chances are you hold. And you have the option, a tremendous opportunity to increase. You look in the 1930s, the 1940s, gold for an ounce was roughly about $35, where it's now, it hovers somewhere around $1,800 and $1,900. So that's a protection against inflation, right? But digital assets are something together. And that's where all these centralized banks and governments are a little bit worried, because they're starting to wake up to it. But that train's left the station eons ago.
They're very worried, Chip. I mean, it's overall, again, they're trying to protect their own interest, and this is, and the deception that we're seeing at the various levels of government is palpable. I mean, it's unreal to see that, we have some individuals over the past couple weeks that were talking, and we talked about this the other day, they were talking about we're coming out of a recession. Then they covered up, and we know we're not coming out of a recession. Then they covered up the fact that prices were going up. No, there won't be inflation. And now everybody is seeing inflation is real. The cost of goods are going up. The cost of gas is more than doubled. And so if your cost of gas has doubled in 1 year, something's going on. If your government is begging OPEC and Russia for oil production, there's something wrong. There's a problem. When you were relatively energy independent, and then at the same time, you have these same characters that are lying to people about inflation and about what's happening. Now, all of a sudden, they're going to say, well, yeah, it actually does exist. But these are the same people that have been going and talking about cryptocurrency as used only for nefarious purposes. I'm seeing a lot of nefarious purpose going on right now that has nothing to do with cryptocurrency. And I see the doubling of product and the delay of import of product. Look at what's going on off the coast of California. It's outrageous. It's disgusting to see, the types of the line of nonsense that they're passing off as being real. And this is something you put in there. Look at prices soar for groceries and gas as inflation climbs, right? Let's see what they say here. Oh, you probably can't hear it.
I don't hear the audio.
No, probably because I didn't do it the right way. So let's try to reshare that with audio this time. And this is so key.
Americans haven't seen inflation like we've experienced recently in a long time.
Yeah. But that's a different tune than she was singing 2 weeks ago, Jeff, or even like I think a month ago, right? Wow.
Yeah. Let's see what she said here. What's this?
As this rising inflation is hitting Americans' wallets hard, impacting everything from gas prices to groceries. When do you expect the inflation to get back to the 2% range, which is considered normal? 2022, 2023, when?
Well, I expect that to happen next year. Monthly rates of inflation have already fallen substantially from the very high rates that we saw in the spring and early summer. On a 12-month basis, the inflation rate will remain high into next year because of what's already happened. But I expect improvement by the middle to end of next year.
Dude, there's something wrong with her. I mean, not even just mentally. There's something physically wrong with her. You see how she's slurring her speech? So you've got she's I don't want to knock anybody,
She's also misspoke too there, Jeff.
She definitely started with yeah. What's that? What did she say?
Well, in the beginning, she started talking about first, maybe the second quarter, and then by the end of it, she's talking about the end of the year, right?
Exactly, and next year, right? So not even 22 or 21. She's talking about 22, maybe going into 23. But there's something physically wrong with her. She's slurring her speech. Now you get to a point, and someone brought this up, that we have a minimum age to run for president, right? There should be a maximum cap on how long people stay in government. There's a point of attrition that everybody faces where they're no longer capable of cognizant of being cognizantly capable. There's clear cognizant decline, and at that point, these people can't be in charge of our stuff. I mean, it's at the absurd levels. And now, singling her out, she is so antiquated and so beyond that she's the one that came out aggressively bashing the crypto space and talking about over and over and over again, it's being used for nefarious purpose. Now, I look at someone like that, and I'm not saying she can or can't, not knocking anyone that, is older than, but at some point, she probably has difficulty using her computer. She probably has difficulty using her cell phone. She probably doesn't know how to access her email.
Yeah, Jeff. The thing about
there was a
thing about her.
It was really bizarre.
I was like, "What happened to you, Jeff?" I was like, "You were like distracted by a second."
I heard air brakes. going
But
on. I've never heard air brakes over.
But Jeff, it does really depend, okay? Because I don't want to put caps on stuff. Now, I would have put a cap on how long somebody can stay in government, but here's a case in point right here, right? So this was a meme that went around not too long ago. I remember I'd seen it about a year or two ago, but this is Sammy Hagar, the rock guy, and Bill Clinton are the same age, okay? So you can see remarkably, and if you look at this,
touched up.
no, this is when he was 71. It's a 3-year-old meme. It says Bill Clinton 70, Sammy's 70, Bill Clinton 71. Now Sammy's 73, Clinton 71. Sammy's had over 40 plus years of alcohol, drugs, sex, and rock and roll. Bill lives with Hillary. So that was like a fun meme that kind of went around. But, it really depends, and then you look at the same one, you got Biden who's 74, and I think you got Trump at 74. It's like there's two different cognitive sort of abilities. One is vivacious, the other one. And look, I mean, the sad part is like when you have somebody who's president, I start feeling bad for a guy who's just really not all there. And it's not really fair to, I know a lot of people goof on it and stuff and joke on it, but you can only lose track of so many things. That town hall the other day was just a disaster, and it's sad to see. I mean, this is the president of this country, and it's like it's rough to go through that, right? I mean, it's a difficult sort of thing to watch.
It's horrible, but now we're surrounded by these types of people, and it's not good. It really isn't.
Let's go, Brenda.
Let's go, Brenda. I
She's
was looking for Brandon, and then everyone.
Well, you know what happens, Jeff?
Let's go,
Brandon. Suppose you're visiting the United States. You flip on Sunday morning. They have all political talk shows where they feature people from the previous week, and then they create the narrative going into the following week of things they want. When it comes to propaganda, they talk about it. So imagine like you turn on the TV. You're in a hotel room. You're having some room service. You're eating your breakfast, and you go like, "Well, who's Nan? Who's Nana?" Got let out of the house and into somebody's studio, and she's like, I believe this, and I believe, and you're like, who is that? Oh, I'm sorry, that's the Secretary of the Treasury. What? That's right, Secretary of the Treasury. That's right, and former Fed chairwoman, right? But this is how crazy and scary this stuff all becomes. Jeff, can we segue into something else too to kind of talk about XRP here?
Need to segue into something.
Yeah, here we go. So look at this right here. We got. So this is goes by _@ XRPI pizza, right? It says Ripple, right? And this was uncovered. This is a interview that Joe Lubin gave
from 14.
Yeah, from 2014. And now I listened to it because I wanted to make sure that everything he's got here is spot on. It's bizarro world because it's a little hard to hear, but he says. He tells people not to publish this question at the 51:33 mark, and it's right before it ended this whatever it was, a session. The question was, is there a limit to the amount a person could invest in Ethereum? And Joe Lubin says a person can buy from any number of identities. We may limit the unit size of the sale. What? And then he goes on to say that just to make it easier to disguise, let's say if you're a whale and you want some privacy, you can buy 50,000 units so nobody scares people with enormous initial purchases. So if you're a whale and you're planning on investing in several million US worth, then you can do that in multiple identities. We will ask for a real world identity in the form of an email address. Now, Jeff, when was the last time you asked somebody for a oh, geez, Jeff. It's like, my name is Sparky punkass@gmail.com. Okay, sounds fair enough to me, Jeff.
That's cool. I mean, you got an email address, you must be legit.
Sounds legit, right? Because it's because everyone puts their real name. So for a real world identity in the form of an email address, just so we can make sure everything works smoothly and the whole way through the process, but we're not going to require it. So they're not even going to require that. This is crazy, right? Then he says, so we can create a pseudonym, email, and identity on purchasing. This is, and then his thought on it. This is XR Pizza says this is outright fraud, misrepresentation, collusion, and corruption. This is verbatim.
At that point, then this could actually fit into the narrative of it being a security, then, because you're distributing specifically for a fundraise.
Well said, Jeff. Exactly.
And you're orchestrating the fundraise.
Right, and Joe Lubin, of course, he's with his entity, which I don't recall the name of it. Is it Consensus? What is the name of his entity? I'll scroll up to the top. Let's see. His whole thing is called, co-founder of Ethereum. founder of Consensus. Yeah, Consensus, right? So you create a pseudonym, an email ready. So this is verbatim right here. So the note was minimum purchase was 0.01 BTC at the time in 2014. Soft purchase maximum. Geez, Jeff, how many zeros are there? Three. What is that? 30 billion. ETH. The script enforces 1,500 Bitcoin. If your purchase is larger, contact this. Large purchases at Ethereum.org. So what he did here was he actually published an email address that you could reach out to the Ethereum Foundation or whatever it was called back then if you had a large purchase with your so-called legit identity email, right? So this right here is the most incriminating part. If you said email me at, large purchases at some pseudonym email, but this is Ethereum.org. And this is in 2014. This is like what you're getting at, Jeff, this whole sort of idea of selling a security potentially.
That's kind of crazy.
Right? And so, it's crazy because look at, there's even more here. He says, please don't try to purchase either directly into a contact address or contract address you would tend to create post-Genesis. We know that at least some of you are clever enough to try this, but we take no responsibility for what happens when we change the protocol or the way to contract the way the contract addresses are generated. Additionally, right now, contract addresses depend on sender address. So he's already like trying to worry about people who are going to try to game the system based on after the Genesis block. That's the first block, and the blockchain was created. He thought, okay, look how clever they are. So they're thinking in terms of at the point when this was sold, this was the ICO. This was selling a security. Yes or no, Jeff?
It sounds like it at that point, right?
I would think so. And then, guys, I mean, I could probably post this in there. You guys want to like see a little bit more of this, but yeah, the whole thing is in there. It starts at the 51 mark. You guys want to listen to it yourselves. I mean, we kind of it's a lot easier for us to talk about it. And the audio is really low, which is another reason we can't play it. We have enough low audio things we've attempted to play, and people turn up their volume, and then Jeff and I start speaking, and we blow yours out. So we don't want to do that. But I thought that was interesting, and gosh, I'm telling you, it's just looking really bad for even a personal opinion from someone like a Bill Hinman's at, even in 2018 saying, well, yeah, it might have been centralized at one point, but today's Ethereum we don't view it as, and they said we don't view it as a security. But interestingly enough, when you go to something going back to Ripple, where it was gifted, it wasn't, it wasn't mine, there was no initial sales or anything, there was no ICO. And then why couldn't they have said, hey, we're going after Ripple with this lawsuit, but we're going to assert that today's XRP. But that's not what they're asserting, Jeff. They're talking about it being an investment contract. And as an investment contract, Judge Netburn is saying, calling the SEC to the mat and saying, well, why don't you define what this contract, investment contract looks like? Because we've seen Gary G, Daddy G, in these interviews saying, well, it's an investment contract and that's fun. You can say that, but tell us exactly how that fits, Jeff. And this is what you and I have pondered many times on this show. How does that exactly fit? Because you're hoping that the effort of Ripple is going to make the effort of others, which in this case would be Ripple, is gonna change the price.
Yeah, and one thing we've seen is that it doesn't happen exactly like that, as all the assets are kind of tied together and developing, in that direction. I wanted to bring this up to you. Now, there were two things that came up. One regarding hyperinflation, which was Jack Dorsey. Jack he posted a tweet. Hyperinflation is going to change everything, and it's happening. And he's kind of spot on with that. We were talking about that earlier. It comes with a consumer price inflation running near a 30-year high in the U.S. and growing concern the problem could be worse. Just like we just heard from Yellen. The Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, acknowledged that inflation pressures are likely to last longer than previously expected, noting they can run well into next year, just like, we're pointing that out. Now, this is really interesting because one thing that we've seen in countries all over the world is that they're looking towards cryptocurrency. Could be Bitcoin, could be XRP, it could be another asset, but looking towards the crypto space as a potential safe haven from inflation, right? So as the fiat currencies devalue, that digital assets increase in value as as a compare to the fiats. Now, it's interesting too because look, here you have, yep, we live with this built in our mental models in Nigeria. Inflation is currently 16%. 16%. Venezuela had 1 million% inflation. 1 million, right? Here you have 16%. Now, Jack is saying it could happen here in the US and all around the world. And now it's insane that this is starting to happen. But you're seeing this drift and this run to crypto. You're seeing to the CBDC. People, they want to go to their digital currencies in some way. Their digital currencies are going to be some sort of a salvation. And we know that Nigeria is rolling out their digital currency tomorrow. Whoops. So, so there's that one. I don't know if you have any feedback on that one. We've kind of talked about inflation, but this is the one I really
Well, I just want to say one thing about that, Jeff. By
Yeah.
the way, this is what happens when people lobby and go all in and say, I cannot wait to change in the regime. So that, and if you think about how you could crash a country in 9 months, it's not, you don't do it by, it's not by random chance, like, we made a couple bad choices. No, it's deliberate, and it's nearly impossible to crash one of the greatest economies the US has ever seen in just 9 months. And you could also assert that it happened less than that. It was more like 5 or 6 months. And now it's on a path of utter destruction. And the guy who's talking about it'll happen here, listen, buddy, listen, Jack, you're the guy that voted for it all, my friend. You were the one riding the high horse saying this is going to be the greatest thing and mean tweets are bad and we got to oust this and we can't have a great economy. But don't worry, I've got my 2 companies, I've got Twitter and I've got my other payments company. And guess what I'll do? And all my Bitcoin. So you sorry, poppers. This is where we're headed, but I'm good.
He's worth billions. Yeah, he's worth billions and billions. So these guys, they don't care. They don't care one way or the other. Rob McDermott, on a much brighter note, my OTC hoodie looked damn good on me today. Thanks for another great show. Thanks for more support from you as well, Rob. And I appreciate the fact that you dipped into the merch store and got an OTC hoodie, which is really outstanding.
Yeah, the hoodies are great, man. They really are awesome. And it's
are.
getting hoodie weather, right? So hoodie weather, at least here, I know. And if you're in Australia, I think you have a reverse season. So you guys are coming into your summer. Yeah, you're in your summer months, which is great. Yeah,
Chip, I guess we'll have to cover this one tomorrow, but this is Bitcoin's Netscape moment.
That's a good one, Jeff.
This is a really good one. We'll cover this one tomorrow, but I like where this one's going. And it's not just, in my opinion, not just Bitcoin, but is it the crypto space moment and when we compare it to what's going on with Netscape, 1994, all that stuff, and we can discuss that.
By the way, I just want to throw a couple quick comments. Matt LaRoche said, Spunky Punk ass, KYC, AML, done. Tick that little box right there. Thought that was a pretty good comment. There's some other good ones in here as well. There's this one right here. What's the bet? There is a Jamie D. Diamond punk ass at hotmail.com. Of course, anytime I see a Hotmail professionally, I just rub my head and say why. Or a Yahoo one. You can tell what era they registered their, but they never changed anything else, right? So, you're right on about that, Matt. If you see one of those from that era, you know exactly where it's going to be.
XRP Speedboat, you need an OTC bug out bag.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good one right there, too.
We got to work on getting
a water straw, too. It has OTC on the side of it, so you can drink any water if you need it. This one, Gordon Peterson, is there a government buyback? Does the government want to buy XRP? I see this pervasive conversation everywhere. I think it's a big myth going on there. I don't know who generated or who started it, but if the government wanted to do a buyback program, they would have done it. I mean, it's $1, right? And where it's headed is probably much greater than that. So I don't see any legs on this, but I've been wrong in the past. But I just don't. To me, I don't know. It's a wishful thinking, but I don't totally see it.
Randy, appreciate you putting that one up there. Call Congress 866-272-6622. Maxine Waters, demand crypto reform, HR 1654.
All right, we should plaster that. We should stick that in one of our
yeah, we're working on our website too. So once our website gets rolled out, we're gonna have a whole segment on that aspect of it. So that's gonna be really important. We're gonna have all bill related crypto legislation. Doesn't necessarily have to be in the US, but it will be. So, but I appreciate you throwing that up there. And
well, Right on. So I'll just say, Jeff, that it's come that time of the hour. We'll be back tomorrow night, and we stream live 6 days a week. It's Sunday through Thursday, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern time, and then Jeff's back on a solo performance rant from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. in the morning, and there's always something special to watch as well. Jeff, what else you have on a closing statement here, other than subscribe, click that notification bell?
That's it. If you're brand new here, you know what to do. Hit the subscribe button. We appreciate all you guys. Appreciate the support tonight. We do have by far the best and the brightest in the crypto space right here on the chain. You guys are awesome. And Brenda in the chains hoodie. But appreciate that. Tomorrow's another night. We got some good content already percolating for tomorrow. We actually have a guest on tomorrow night. We're going to be talking about NFTs. If you guys ever wanted to know about NFTs, tomorrow night we're going to talk about NFTs. So
but tomorrow it's a little bit different, Jeff. I just want to preface that with, this is a unique project because stored on the XRPL. Okay, so it has a unique tie-in, a very specific tie-in, a very cool project, and we're excited to show it to you tomorrow and talk with the project. But again, it's a cool project, and I love anything centered around the XRPL, so it's cool.
That's it. With that, Chip, I'm ready to get out of here. You ready to go?
All right, let's get out of here, guys. Have a great week, rest of your week. We will be back tomorrow night. Jeff and Chip out. We will see you on the next one. Take care. Have a good one.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.